$210. That is all that is left. After the rent is paid. After the heat and the water. For 13 million American families, $210 is the whole rest of the month. It is the end of the month in a kitchen somewhere in America. A mother counts what is left after the rent clears. $7 a day. $7 for food, for gas, for medicine, for the kids. In 2019, that same family had $410 left. The buffer did not shrink. It was cut in half. Harvard's Housing Center measured this in June of 2026. The National Low-Income Housing Coalition confirmed the shortage underneath it. So here is the question. How does a working family in the richest country on earth end up with $7 a day? And why should you care, even if your own rent is just fine? The story everyone already knows goes like this. Rent is too high. Wages did not keep up. There are not enough cheap homes. All three are true. Right now, 22.7 million renter households are cost-burdened. That means housing eats more than 30 cents of every dollar they earn. 22.7 million. That is almost half of every renter in America. 12.1 million of them are severely burdened. For them, housing takes more than half of everything they make. Picture your whole paycheck as a pie. For half of America's renters, the landlord gets the first and biggest slice before anyone else eats. In the 1960s, only about 1 in 4 renters was cost-burdened. Today it is 1 in 2. It has doubled. The rule we use to define unaffordable was written in 1969. A senator named Edward Brooke drew the line at 30% of income. Back then, crossing that line was rare. Now half the country lives on the wrong side of it. And this is not just a few expensive cities. Rents got less affordable in 44 of the 50 states, and in 88 of the 100 largest metros. Color in a map of where it got worse, and almost the whole country turns red. Then look at supply. There are 11 million extremely low-income renters. For every 100 of them, there are just 35 homes they can actually afford. 35 homes. 100 families. It is musical chairs. Except 65 chairs are missing before the music even starts. So which story is this really? A bad few years? Or something that has been quietly breaking for 60 years? But here is what almost nobody is saying. Everyone thinks this is a poor person's problem. It is not. The fastest growing group of burdened renters is the middle class. Households earning $45,000 to $75,000 a year. Half of them are now cost burdened. That share jumped almost 10 points in just 5 years. Even six-figure renters are feeling it. Among those earning over $75,000, the burden climbed too. The water is rising. And it is no longer just down in the basement. It is coming up the stairs. But the number that should scare an economist is not 22 million. It is $210. Here is why. When a family has nothing left after rent, they cannot spend. And consumer spending is about 70% of the entire US economy. So when 13 million families drop to almost zero, that spending quietly drains away. It does not show up as a crash. It shows up as empty stores, slow restaurants, and doctor visits that never happen. Every healthy economy needs a cushion. Savings are what let a household survive a layoff or a recession. For these families, that cushion has already been spent on rent. A population with no buffer is an economy with no shock absorber. Remember, $210 a month is about $7 a day. $7 for food, transport, medicine, and childcare. 1 car repair ends the month. 1 emergency room visit ends the year. These families are not careless. They are 1 bad day away from the street. This changes everything. Or does it? So what does all this mean for you, even if you own your home? Start with the bear case because it is grim. Housing unaffordability is not just sad. It is a drag on the whole economy. Researchers at the Urban Institute spell out how. It suppresses spending. It freezes workers who cannot afford to move for a better job. It stops young people from ever starting a household. One landmark study found housing shortages may have cut US growth by more than a third between 1964 and 2009. More than a third of our growth. Quietly lost to scarcity and rent. Now the bull case because it is real too. Rents are finally cooling. A record wave of apartment building has hit the Sun Belt. In many cities, rents are flat or even falling for the first time in years. Landlords are handing out free months and concessions. Supply at last is starting to respond. But here is the catch. Almost all of those new apartments were built at the top of the market. Luxury units, not the cheap homes the 11 million actually need. It is like a famine where the only new food is caviar. Technically, there is more supply. It just is not bread. That is why, even in a cooling market, affordability got worse, not better. So picture the damage in 3 layers, in order of who gets hit. Layer 1, the renters with nothing left. They feel it now, today, every single month. Layer 2, the middle class climbing toward the same cliff. They feel it next. Layer 3, everyone else including you. You feel it as slower growth, frozen workers, and a generation that cannot buy in. Because a whole generation is now locked out of owning. To afford the typical home today, you need about $126,000 a year. The median home now costs 5 times the median income. That is a record. The typical first-time buyer is now 36 years old. The oldest since 1981. The ladder did not just get harder to climb. Someone pulled it up. We started with $210. Now we know what that number really means. It is not just one family's hard month. It is the sound of an economy spending its very last cushion. Here is what we still do not know. No one can say exactly when the bill comes due. The cooling market might buy us a little time. Or the next recession lands on 13 million families with nothing left to cut. There are really only two fixes on the table. Build millions of new homes, or cap what landlords are allowed to charge. And here is the uncomfortable part. Most economists say one of those two fixes quietly makes the shortage worse. So before you decide who is right, sit with the real question. Build more or cap rents? One of them backfires. Which one would you bet your city on? Tell me in the comments. And before you scroll away, ask yourself one thing. If a working family in the richest country on earth has $7 a day, who exactly is this economy working for?